Maseches Bava Metziah, Perek Elu Metzios. We're starting now the second Perek of Bava Metziah, called Elu Metzios. Elu Metzios deals with something very simple and yet not so simple. What happens when you find an a lost object in the street? So forget about everything you know about, just being nice and being kind, because it's not what this Perek is all about. There's a very specific called halachic obligation to return a lost object. It's mentioned in Parshas Mishpatim, and again we saw it, a week or two ago in the Parsha. We have a mitzvah saseh, Hashev tishivim la'achicha. There's a lot aseh, lo tuchal lisalem, and more aseh, lot aseh. These are the basic ones. There's a positive commandment: return the lost object to your friend, and there is a prohibition of lo tuchal lisalem. Don't ignore the lost object. Conceptually speaking, you should not ignore if you see something that looks, that follows the conditions which I'm going to tell you. You have to not ignore it, but rather try and look for the one who lost it and return it to his hands. Now, there are a few rules in this parent. First, there are about 8 different rules that the Tiferes Yisrael, the Parish and the Mishnah, gives you regarding Hashavas Aveda. And some of them will meet straight away, some of them we won't. I also do not accept questions now about that because it's just an introduction, yeah? Now, if you have questions of what, if, and how, that's not the place, because I'm just giving you the very, very basic introduction. So first of all, Hashavas Aveda me'ikar adin only applies to Jews and not to Goyim, yeah? And therefore, in other words, if you want to give it to Goy, it's nice, it's Kiddush Hashem. According to some people, we all know the story of the guy in America who bought a desk and he found $90,000, big Kiddush Hashem, nice. Me'ikar adin, that's Kiddush Hashem, it's not Hashavas Aveda, it's a different mitzvah. Hashavas Aveda applies to Jews. Not only that, if you find the Aveda in a city where most people are not Jewish, Chicago, not in the Frum area, if that exists, I don't know. Yeah, you find it in, South London. Yeah, most people in South London are not Jewish, right? As far as I know. Good. So therefore, you find it there, you don't have to return it. Listen to this, although I don't want to go into it, something interesting which I saw yesterday in an interesting sefer called Shulchan Aruch. What happens if you found something that doesn't look Jewish, something very innocuous? I don't know, you found a wallet with some money, pounds, no credit card. You have no idea to know who it is, but the wallet has a siman. But most people there are not b'nei bris. And what? And then comes to your guy and gives you a siman, and this guy's long payas, and he's a Satmar Chosid who lives in London, and he says, it's mine. Do you have to give it back to him? No. The Ikar did no. He can be nice, and it's recommended Lifnim Mishur Sadin, but because he found it in a place where most people are not Jewish, the entire chiyuv, the entire obligation never actually started. So when you are coining it from what's halachically already called a hefker by the Torah, because it's in a place where most people are not Jewish, not mechuyev to give back. I know it's interesting, and I don't welcome questions for the simple reason which we'll see it later on. A third rule, and that is actually the main rule, yiush. Yiush means what? En yush ba'olam klal. If you're not a Breslover, you know there's a thing called yiush. Yiush means a person gave up hope. So in the simple sense of the word, without going to different questions, once you know, or you assume, that's a question, you know that the person says, kiss. Yeah, you saw a guy, that something fell from his pocket. You watch him from far away with a binocular, your yente, and you saw that the guy already moved 1 or 2 kilometers away from the lost object, and you heard him saying, oh, I lost that, oh, Hashem should be, and then you can go pick it up and me'ikar hadin. Again, it would be nice if you return it to him, but me'ikar hadin, but the cold letter of the law, once he was miyash, halacha views it as hefker, you don't have to give it back to him. Also, situations where yiush is assumed. Yeah, Rabbi, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So now, thank you for the vote of confidence. I appreciate it very much. So now, okay. I know there are people who view this that are not within our group, so I'm censoring a lot of things I want to say here. Basically, what happens if you found something, yeah, let's say you live in a place where there's a long river, you live at the end of the river, and yeah, somebody from the top of the river, from the mouth of the river, the beginning of the river, he lost something because just starts, floating, drifting away in the river. And you found it. You have to give it back to the guy who lost it over there. The answer is no. Why? Because the situation in which a person lost something to a river, and most probably the river doesn't flow the other direction, and most people are not honest, and he assumed, or most people would assume in such a situation to be meyash, even if this guy was not meyash, I saw yesterday in Shulchan Aruch, but if it's a situation in which avuda mimenu mekol odom, which means a situation in which most normal people would give up hope, That's the first time in my life when we learned this, when we learned about ebb and flow. None of us know in Kitadala what that means, yeah? Let's say the person who lost, the Gemara talks about it, a person lost something, on the beach when he was, the one situation, and then it flew away, it drifted away. Of course, he gave up hope. And even if he didn't, most people would. In such a situation, you don't have to give it back to him. Even if there is a siman, it's considered as completely lost. This situation of yiush. Yiush is the most important name of the game. If a person was meyash or machlokes Abba and Rav, if he assumed to be meyash later on, then we say the Aveda does not have to be returned because Allah looks at it as a hefker object already. How do you, and as we already saw in the previous sugya, what's the mechanism of giving back a lost object? The person has to do hachroza. What's hachroza? The finder has to announce and give the general description of the item, and the Gemara will discuss exactly what. And then the one who lost it, can I call him the loser, or is that not enough? The one who lost it is not a loser, just lost an object, doesn't mean he's a loser, yeah? Can happen to anybody. The one who lost it, the me'abed, he should give you simonim. How good should the simonim be? Either regular or muvhakim. We saw they can either be regular simonim or super duper beyond reasonable doubt kind of simonim. That's a different question. Once he gives you simonim, which means identification marks that belongs to him, then you give it back to him, providing that Jewish in a Jewish place, not meyash, that's assumed to be meyash, v'chula v'chula. There's another exception if you're a big Talmid Chacham and it's not covered for you to schlep a cow, I don't know, in the middle of the street and somebody lost his cow, lost his marbles, and it's not so mechubah to take marbles in the street for the old man, for the Rosh Hashiva with the big white beard. So that's another issue to discuss later. Elu Metzios Shelo. Says the Heilige Mishnah, Elu Metzios Shelo ve'elu chayv lehachriz. These are his Metzias. Some Metzias you find in Metzias are lost objects, and I will not just repeat the word again and again. These are the Metzias that belong to the finder. Elu chayv lehachriz. There's another list, which we'll see later on, of Metzias, of lost objects, which you do have to announce and tell everybody that you found it, so they should give you simonim. So we have both lists, although now we're only going in this Mishnah to mention the first list. Elu Metzios Shaloi. These are Metzias that belong to the finder because of various reasons. The main reason is because yiush. We assume that the person who lost them has no siman, and therefore we assume that he gave up hope. A person found scattered fruit. It's not true when they say scattered fruit, by the way. It's wrong. I don't have a go on translators here. Scattered fruit. So no. So these are scattered grains of wheat. Says Rashi later on the end of the page, and that's muchach from those sugya. If you found, actually, from your point of view, you found scattered fruit, which means scattered grains of wheat or barley or the like, and soon we'll see why only that. And the scattered, there's no siman, there's no identification, there's no siman, it's just scattered all over. We're going to discuss it today if we have time. Then there's no siman. Mois mefuzois. You found scattered coins. Coins, shekels. Shekels are all shekels. They all look the same. And you just found them scattered in the street without any way to identify. In other words, they're not shaped like a pyramid. Are not shaped, you didn't make from those coins, you didn't find them on the fence, like, I don't know, F-shaped or L-shaped or I love B'Shemesh shaped. They're just scattered all over. So there's no siman. Money is always money, and scattered is, everyone can lose scattered. There's no siman, no way to identify. He found bundles of wheat, bundles of wheat or barley or any grains, and he found krichos, which means he found small bundles, and they are in the street. Only small and only in the street. Why? The small bundles, if you found them in the street, then people already, unfortunately, trampled over them and kicked them without noticing, and therefore, even if there was a knot with a K, that could have been a siman, right? Remember, a knot may not be a siman. So even if they have a very special, interesting kind of knot, that knot is assumed to be destroyed by the people of Rishus Harabim. If the krichas are big or the krichas were found in a private area, that's a different story. But if those bundles were found in the street and also they're small, these are two strikes against the loser in this case, and you don't have to give it back to him because we assume that the knot is already faded. The igule devela are basically round discs made out of compressed dried figs. I saw one in Spain. They sell them in Spain. I saw it. I was, oh, here's my gula dvela from Kita Daled. It's like a big, very bigger than supermarket, a very big disc made out of many, dried figs. We didn't buy it. It's Elohim, whatever. They cut it also. I don't know with which knife. They cut a piece and sell. And therefore, a gula dvela, although to us may sound very exotic and interesting, back then it was like saying, I found a carton of milk. Thank you. Today some cartons of milk, a bag of milk, the Israeli bag of milk, they all look the same. Tnuva, thank you. That's not a siman, it's mass produced, right? So gulat vela is not called something with a siman enough, it's still called mass produced, and therefore you don't have to give it back to the one who lost. Kikoros shel nachtoim, which means kikoros shel nachtoim are loaves of bread made by the baker, which means, you can't really tell, I found bread. What kind of bread? It was angel's bread. Tell that to the angels. What all angel bread look more or less the same. The regular one in the nylon bag, the cut one you give in a sandwich to your kids, 3/4 of the country use the same thing. A Berman, angel, thank you. They're all the same. It's a cookie cutter. It's like a kid's school, all the same. Because you don't announce it because the person was miyash. Why is he miyash? Because there is no siman. Get it? I'm allowed to take that bread because I assume that the one who lost it knows that there is no siman, so you already use miyash to begin with. Although, okay, we're going to discuss yiush midas later. Machrozes shel dogim. Machrozes is basically a necklace, fish necklace, which means many fish. Fish for consumption, fish as food, which are all tied together in one necklace, basically one stringed fish. It's probably called, no, whatever. The kids it's also standard. Maybe today would look very interesting, but in many cultures, that's basically like a very standard thing, like bread, like milk, like eggs, like 12 eggs today. It's something so standard and so mass produced, it's not a siman. So he was miyash, I assume, or / I know, and I can take it. The chadichot shel basar, pieces of meat, is the same thing. All meat is cut the same from the butcher. The gizei tzemer al kuchin mimdinosan. Gizei tzemer are pieces of wool which are taken from the Medina. Medina doesn't mean the state of Israel. Medinosan means from the countryside, which means before they were individually developed, into different kinds of wool, this shape, this color, that color. Basically a raw piece of wool, which was just shorn off the sheep. They all look the same. They feel the same, look the same, smell the same, and therefore it's not a siman, and I can take it. Vanitze pishtan, also strands of flax in its very primal form. They all look the same. The lashonas shel argaman, hare elu shaloi. Lashonas shel argaman may look more developed. Lashonas shel argaman are pieces of wool that are combed and dyed red. Ooh, so maybe red is a siman. Why can't I say I found a red piece of wool? That's like going to kollel, of Avrechim and say I found a shirt. Which color? White. Oh, that's a siman. Whoa. And I found a kippah, black. Oh, that's a terrific sim. No, why not? Some colors are not simanim. They're pretty standard. And therefore, the Lashon Shel Argaman, it's very, very common color to dye it red, right? Not to paint it, to dye red. And therefore, Hare Elu Shelo, it's not a siman, it's nothing significant or different out of the box. Divrei Rabbi Meir, so says Rabbi Meir, which by the way, people don't argue with conceptually, but that's what Rabbi Meir says. Let's just finish the Mishnah, even though we're 2 minutes above, beyond. Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol sheyesh bo shinui chayav la'achri. Says Rabbi Yehuda, any item that has something different in it, it's a standard item, but with some kind of tweak, some kind of change, something weird and different in the item, you have to be machris. We may ask, what's the chiddush? We'll discuss it in round off of Gimel thing. Ketzad, for example, how's that? Motza igul b'soich cheres. Remember that igul shel dveila? The disc of many figs stuck together, compressed together. You found it, and inside a piece of clay. Oh, that's weird. A piece of clay stuck in the middle. That's something out of the box. So of course he's not miyash because he knows he can give the siman piece of cheres. Kikar ubesoich mois. He found a loaf of bread. In the loaf of bread, what was found inside? Some money. Some people put the schlitzel, they put the key inside the challah after Pesach. So kikar b'toch. So okay, maybe he put it on purpose. Kikar b'toch mois. Those things that are standard but have something weird in the middle, like money in the bread. And the guy says, "There's money in my bread." They cut and they see that it's true. That's a siman. What's the chiddush to be discussed? Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer kol klei and puria ein chayv lahachis. Says Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, klei and puria are kelim that are new, as good as new, either new or new, depends where you come from. Yeah. So then, if you found something very new, something new you didn't yet get, acquainted with, you didn't get used to it, and you don't know how the thing yet looks. You didn't get your tvias ein in it, and therefore in chayv lahachris. We're talking, by the way, about Talmid Chacham. Remember, Talmid Chacham does not have to give back with simonim. If a Talmid Chacham says, yes, I recognize it's mine, like in the police order, like he would say, that's, he can look at 5 black hats and he would right away say, that's my black hat. A Talmid Chacham is believed that it's really his hat without giving simonim. But if it's a new hat, if it's a new item, then he's not believed because he didn't yet acquainted himself enough with it to actually recognize it. Shkoyach, may we continue Metzia Hashem tomorrow. That was just the opening session. May Hashem forgive all our averas. Thank you very much.